Welcome back to another podcast of Heal Without Harm. My name is Dr. Clayton Dir, physical therapist, also known as at TheDocDir. Today is going to be a little bit different. I had a student reach out needing to do an interview, and I thought this may be some good content. And so we're going to flip the script. I'm actually going to be the one interviewed by a gentleman named Isaac. Isaac, welcome.
How's it going, man?
It's going well, and I looked forward to kind of what we're going to get to. I don't know what these questions are. Has something to do with a project at school, and so people know who you are, Isaac. Give me a 1-minute spiel on who are you?
Well, I came out of a tiny little town called Bueller. No one's probably ever heard of it, but I'm at WSU right now working on my bachelor's in exercise science, planning on entering the physical therapy program there. And today I'm just here with a project for one of my classes where I have to interview good old Clayton here about things with sports, his sports background, about injuries, and how he treats his patients here.
Perfect. Let's get on to the first question. What do you got for me?
All right. So the first question, pretty general, is what does your background in sports looks like?
Like what sports have I played?
Yeah.
I feel like I was the jack of all trades, but never super good at any single sport. Grew up playing basketball, football, and baseball. Ultimately, wanted to go pro in baseball like every 7th grader does.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I was good enough to play on all the teams and start, but never good enough to go much farther. And then as I got into high school, I didn't like football enough to keep playing. Then kind of dropped off with basketball as well and went all in on baseball. And then sophomore year, the writing was on the wall that I wasn't going to be able to go very far with baseball. So I decided to switch over to track. Found out that I was pretty decent at hurdling, ended up going to state, got top 10 in state for 300-meter hurdles, was never tall enough to do the 110s. My butt would catch the 10th hurdle because my stride was a little bit too short. Also did long jump and triple jump, would usually get top 5 at meets, but never made it past regionals or state there. Other than that, I'm just generally active. Also do stuff with CrossFit. I've also toyed a little bit with tumbling and doing flips and stuff like that. Again, a little bit of everything, but never one thing hard to the core.
Yeah, I did quite a bit of things. Do you still compete in anything right now?
So I think I've talked on this podcast a little bit. I think people don't realize how fun it is to compete. And when you get out of high school, if you're lucky enough to play stuff in college, that's awesome. But a lot of people aren't able to or don't choose to. And then I feel like we have this missing link in our life where we're not as happy. And I think it's because we stopped competing with like anything. And so I realized that I missed that. And in 2015 or 16, I think it was 2016, I did a men's physique competition. I got 3rd when I did that. And then I went quite a while without any sort of competition. And then in 2023, I did a strongman competition and got 2nd, qualified for nationals. And then last year, I ran my first half marathon, ran it in 2:08, which I wanted to go faster, but being that I was never a runner, I'm actually still pretty satisfied with the time. And so those are my competitions so far. I'll probably do another half at some point in time. And then I may do an ultra trail run in a long time from now, but that would be more a version of I'm just going to go hike a bunch and not really pay attention to time. So yes, I have done some competitions of, again, very various things ultimately.
Yeah, you've gone through a lot of different stuff.
Yeah.
So have you had any injuries throughout like all your time playing sports and stuff?
Going way back to 5th grade, or maybe it was 6th. I think 6th grade, I fractured my foot. 7th grade, I fractured my ankle. I sprained it really bad and was out for like 3 weeks at one point in time. And then in high school, I hurt my shoulder, and that's kind of what started the PT aspect. Humorously enough, by the time I got to PT, which was like 3 weeks after injury, I had no pain. But I really enjoyed showing up multiple times, like showing up weekly and having somebody like walk that path with me. And I think that's what opened my eyes to physical therapy. And I don't think I had any other like groundbreaking injuries that like stopped me. Thankfully, I never had to get any major surgery. I broke my hand in baseball once. Ignorantly, I actually played the rest of the season. I didn't know I broke it until I had it x-rayed a couple months later, and it was no longer straight as it had healed back. Thankfully, it doesn't affect me to this day. But no, I had no major injuries that took me out more than just like a fractured bone in middle school.
So none of them like really stuck out as like especially terrible.
No. And I'm very grateful for that. Hopefully there's none in my future either.
Absolutely. I hope you don't have any more. So obviously I haven't had super severe injuries, but how did they affect you mentally as well as physically?
So I think I want to talk on two parts here. Going back to my first injury when I fractured my foot, I remember it hurt really bad, and I knew I was hurt because I stood up and my leg just gave out because as I went to put weight on the fractured foot, I dropped. No tears, nothing. I was just frustrated laying on the sidelines, and I was like, hopefully I can be back by next week. And then when I got to the doctor's office, he told me that I would be out for the season. And then, I couldn't stop crying. Like, that's when it hit me. And I think that's not talked about unless you talk to someone specifically about it, or afterwards you feel like you're the only one kind of being a baby when you're not. But like, that's how it feels in those moments when you're it's like a piece of your identity goes away, right? Like you generally identify as an athlete, somebody who can do something cool, run fast, jump high, or you identify as being a part of that team. And when you see that or feel that taken away from you secondary to an injury for what seems like will be forever, right? I had to be in a cast for 8 weeks. Some people with ACL tears or like major surgeries, they may be out for a year. That feels like a whole lifetime, especially at a younger age. And so for me personally, the knowing what was coming after the injury was way more turmoil than any pain that I could take on from the injury itself. Like fracturing a foot was nothing compared to being out of the season, And so I think the injury leads to more mental pain than any of the physical pain aspect of it, which makes me really empathize, especially when I work with patients and I have to be the one to tell them like, this is going to suck for a while. I'm here to talk to you about it the whole time because I've been in your shoes at a lower level.
Mm-hmm. That's really cool. Yeah, we're going to talk a little bit more about that with your patients a little bit later. So next question involving specifically to you is, what methods, or if you have any methods, are involved in just taking care of your mental health in general?
So I think I've done some different posts on this, whether it be social media or podcasts. When it comes to mental health, I think a lot of people think they need to go to the gym to lose fat, gain muscle, have improved cardiovascular health, which is all true. But if you talk to anybody that's done it for longer than 6 months or a year and they're still showing up, I've actually went around a gym before and asked, I think 14 or 15 people in a CrossFit class, and I asked them like, why are you still here? What's the most important thing? And they all say mental health. And so you have this massive cascade of changes that take place from a physiological to a psychological perspective when you work out, whether it be working hard and challenging yourself, or whether it be seeing those changes over a long period of time. And so I would say like the number one antidote for depression and anxiety would be weightlifting. And so I've also seen that change for me personally, whether it be weightlifting or running, or for some people, maybe jujitsu or going on log walks, whatever it may be. But my current thing to keep me literally happy and not an a-hole to my family is running or cycling 3 times a week, and then weightlifting twice a week. And then I try to always get outside to go on a walk, go on a bike ride with my family, wherever it may be. But I would say being active every day is now almost the pill that I have to take. And I am not happy at the end of the day on the days that I am not very active. And so I've found that I need to take that prescription every day of some sort of physical activity. Mm-hmm. And that's how I've maintained my own personal health. Much better than if I wouldn't do all that.
Absolutely. I really like that perspective. So now let's talk a little bit about patients and what you do with them. So first of all, what type of patients or situations do you usually interact with? So is it like certain age groups, certain people that do sports, people that don't do sports? Is there people you specifically interact with?
We try to use the word active because nobody identifies it as an athlete. Even me, I have a hard time identifying at all as a runner because I'm like the weightlifter who started running. But I've now been running for 9 months at least consistently. I've ran a half marathon at a time that a lot of people would be proud of, including myself. I'm definitely not running an hour and a half where those people can run the whole half faster than I can run 1 mile. But I have now noticed that it's hard for me to identify as a runner. So if we say we treat athletes only, we're going to cut out 90+% of the population because they don't think they're an athlete. So they're probably not going to think they can come here. Okay. So we say we treat the active population. So if you move your body at all, you're a good fit for us. Pretty much anybody could be. But I would say if we wanted to get more specific, the majority of our people are generally 35 to 65-year-old females for a couple different reasons. One, females are generally more likely to ask for help. Guys are much more stubborn and they have trouble asking for help. The other reason it's around females, as I learn more and more about like perimenopausal symptoms, so symptoms around menopause, there's a lot of changes at a hormonal level at those ages that make it a lot harder for those ladies to recover. So they may be doing all the right things in the weight room or working out, but their body unfortunately isn't able to carry out the recovery aspect as well as they want. And so they need help and assistance with that, whether it be stuff from me or a referral from me to a doctor who can help them with that. That would be the majority of our cases, but any athlete or active human can benefit from coming here.
Okay, I see. So how exactly in physiotherapy do you interact with all your clients, all your patients?
Oh, that's a really vague question. I will give you a general outline of one visit and then what our plan of cares look like. Will that kind of answer it?
Yeah, that'll work great.
Perfect. So in our evaluations, and all of our treatments are going to be about an hour long. The evaluation itself is probably 10 to 20 minutes of subjective stuff. So me asking them what's going on and them telling me their story, and then us kind of going back and forth to get their history. Then we'll move on to some objective testing. So range of motion, strength, flexibility, all the stuff where I'm trying to rule in and rule out whatever structures are affected. Then we go into some sort of treatment, which usually consists of dry needling, scraping like A-stem or Graston, cupping if I think it's necessary, or some hands-on approach to try to get pain levels down. Then we finish out with some sort of exercise prescription. Usually I keep it to 2 or 3 exercises that I think are going to really move the needle forward for them. And then I'll talk to them about what the plan of care looks like. Traditionally, we'll see people anywhere from 10 to 20 visits. Probably about 10 is the main amount, though, over about 3 months. We find weekly is very efficient. They're not taking off work too much, but we're also seeing them back to back enough at the beginning to really help build the habits that they didn't have before to allow them to actually heal and recover as quick as possible.
Okay. So throughout your patients building up, exercise plans, building up just exercising in general, how do you feel that they react? Like, how's their attitude change typically? Do you see like a noticeable like positivity improvement, or maybe no notice at all?
It really depends on where they start. Some people come in and they're like, "Hey, I'm ready to do the work. Just lay out the path." One person today was like, "I only think I need to see you a couple times because I just need some direction on where to go." Sometimes they're very accurate in that statement. Sometimes it's like, how much do you know right now, and how much do I think you actually need? And sometimes those are perfectly aligned, and sometimes we need to have a heart-to-heart on what this really will look like moving forward. Today, the gal that I worked with, I think she was pretty accurate. I told her I'll see you in a month, and if you implement everything, your pain will probably be 90% better. But some people come in and I can tell they were forced in here by a boss, by a friend, by a loved one. And to me, those are my favorite because I like the challenge of kind of like converting their perspective. I would say the biggest and most prominent, most common turnaround is the female who thinks that if they lift weights, they're going to get bulky, which is not accurate. And they definitely need strength training to build muscle mass. And so it's really fun, whether it's day 1 or day 2, handing them a kettlebell and asking them to deadlift it after just a little bit of instruction on form. And then I'll say, how much do you think that was? And they say like 20, 25 pounds. And I'm like, that was a 70-pound kettlebell. And you said it wasn't very heavy. And so you're capable of a lot more. We're going to push you to lift heavy things. And that's how you're going to build strength. And then after that, you see this eye-opening experience and this like drastic increase in confidence, just like pouring out of them. And so that's usually what we see moving forward is less fragile mindsets. They're less worried about breaking themselves, and they're a lot more confident because now they can do hard things and lift up heavy weights. And that's like the joy of my entire profession is watching all of that unfold.
That's awesome. All right, I've got kind of 2 more questions for you.
Perfect.
So the first one, both of these kind of involve your career and how they've affected you. First one is, how has your career affected your outlook on like how injuries affect people?
How has my career affected how injuries affect, or how I think injuries affect people?
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, going through this profession has quadrupled, if not like infinitely grown my empathy. Because when you come in our office here, you get full permission to just let everything out. And so whether that's, my back hurts, and then I'm like, why do you think your back hurts? And we get to talking and we realize Maybe your back is so spasmed up secondary to the argument you had with your spouse last night. Or maybe you're really sad or frustrated or scared or anxiety ridden about your kid having to stay in the hospital a week ago. Or maybe they're in the hospital now and you don't know what to do. But you get permission to like vent or let it out and just kind of get it off your chest. I had one gal yesterday that came in. She tore her ACL, let's say 2 months ago. I can't recall how long ago, but her surgery was 5 weeks ago. And she doesn't feel like she's getting good quality PT right now, or at least her body's not responding. We're not sure what's going on, but things aren't working. And I remember I sat down, I said, all right, let it out. And she just started bawling. And so it lets me know that there's kind of patterns to recovery or rehab or, healing an injury. And there's a whole mental side that is talked about when you're in the thick of it, but not talked about outside of it. And so being able to see multiple people of different backgrounds go through a ton of different injuries and handling them different mentally lets me know that all of this is normal. And then I can prep that person in front of me and I can tell them what you're going through is normal right now. It doesn't make it okay. It still sucks, I know, but you're not alone and you're not abnormal. This is a part of the process. And then knowing kind of what's coming next. Like, hey, when you get through this struggle right now, which should only last a couple more weeks, because here's how the body responds. Here's the things you can control. And I want you to block everything else out and just focus on these things here. And in 1 month, you're going to be a lot happier. And in 1 month, you're going to be a lot farther. And I like that because it gives them sense of control, but also knowing that the pain and suffering is going to end in about this much time. And so that's what I've really learned by seeing a large volume of people over 5 years and starting to see some patterns coming out of those.
Awesome. All right. My last question for you is, along with your career, how has it affected your just outlook on injury prevention in general?
I think injury prevention is oversold because I don't think we can avoid injuries. I think we can only reduce them. And even at that, stuff happens. I would use a different word, but stuff happens. This gal, I don't think there's anything that she could have done, the ACL tear. I don't think there's anything she could have done strength-wise to prevent her ski getting caught and twisting her knee and popping her ACL. Like that's relatively unavoidable. And the only way to avoid it is to not go skiing. And that's not living life. And that's not fun. And so just knowing that if you're going to play the game, you're going to have risk. And a good PT and a good, set of healthcare people and a good trainer is going to reduce that risk, but it's still always there. Like even just think about, I think his name was Kevin Ware. He was in March Madness many years ago, jumped up to try to block a shot. And then on the way down, landed and his tibia just snapped. There may have been, like, hey, was he sleeping enough? Was he doing all this? And then there's just a stroke of bad luck. And so I think injury prevention on preventable injuries, definitely a case. You're definitely going to be able to reduce them. But going through life, you will have pain. You are going to have physical pain at some point in time in your life. You're going to have an injury. And you can do all you want and all you can to reduce that. But like truly just buckle up because it'll happen to you. And how are you going to handle it ultimately? And if you're not doing stuff that's going to risk injury, then I'm sorry, that sounds like a really sad life. I'll take a ton of fun, 10 times the fun and an injury every 5 years because that sounds like a funner life to live or a more fun life to live if my English teacher from high school is listening. So that's my perspective on those things.
That's cool. I haven't thought about it that way. So I actually really appreciate that.
Yeah. I would say I was right where you were. I remember when I started, my boss who started the clinic, he said, everybody is going to need PT at some point in their life. It's just a matter of when. And I thought, like, my first thought was like, well, that's very opportunistic of you as the business owner. And then I realized when I see people, I treat them, they get better, they go away. 2 years later, they call back and they say, hey, I was doing this. And now my shoulder hurts when I saw them for low back pain. And you just start to realize that people are going to have pain here and there. It's fairly inevitable, but we're here to help and mitigate the amount of pain, the amount of frequency, and the intensity of that pain along the way. But as you personally grow older, I'm guessing you're 20 to 22 currently?
Yeah, 20.
Yeah. I mean, you're just starting a lot of stuff. I feel like you and I might as well be the same age, but there is an 11-year difference between us. And I think there's a lot of fun learning that takes place as you start to see how you respond, your friends respond, your parents grow a little bit older, all of those things. And you're like, yep, everybody's going to have pain. What can we do about that? And how can we navigate it? Becomes the actual question.
That's awesome.
So any others?
That's all I have for you, but
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Yes, you are very welcome. And if you are listening and if you have not left a rating or review, please do so. It really helps us grow the podcast. Isaac, I appreciate you out of nowhere coming in to interview me. It helps me a lot. It helps the listeners a lot. And hopefully here, people have learned a little bit more how to heal without harm. Thank you. Athletes and club teams, load up your gear with Van Gogh Transport Services. Led by local Ironman triathletes, Van Gogh safely ships your bikes, team equipment, or even bulky luggage to out-of-town events. Focus on performance, not logistics. Explore more at vangohtransport.biz.
Free audio post-production by alphonic.com.